Emma adjusted her crisp uniform and checked her reflection one last time in the staff lounge mirror before heading to the terminal. It was another busy day in her life as a flight attendant, a job that had kept her afloat after her world crumbled 5 years ago. The hum of the airport, the shuffle of passengers, and the sense of purpose the job gave her were all part of her new normal. She had learned to live with the ache of Adrien's loss, the man she had loved and mourned every day since his untimely death in a car accident. As Emma boarded the plane for the flight to Los Angeles, she forced herself to focus. First class was filled with its usual mix of business people, celebrities, and travelers seeking luxury. She smiled warmly at the passengers as they settled in, carefully noting their preferences as she took orders for drinks. When she reached the man in seat 3A, her world tilted. He was immersed in conversation with the striking woman next to him, but his profile, sharp jawline, familiar dimpled smile, and the faint scar just above his brow stopped her in her tracks. Emma's breath caught, and the tray in her hand trembled. It couldn't be. "Excuse me, miss," the woman beside him said, her polished voice snapping Emma back to reality. "Sorry about that," Emma murmured, recovering quickly. She noted their orders and hurried back to the galley, her heart pounding in her chest. The resemblance was uncanny. The man looked exactly like Adrien. Not just similar but identical. Was her mind playing tricks on her, or had grief somehow rewired her perception? Fighting the urge to glance back, Emma busied herself with preparing drinks, trying to focus on the task at hand. Yet, her thoughts were a whirlwind of questions and disbelief. When Emma returned to serve the drinks, the man's laughter rang out, a sound so painfully familiar it made her knees weak. He glanced up at her briefly, his eyes brushing hers. There was no flicker of recognition, no sign that he saw her as anyone other than a flight attendant. Emma's stomach churned. If this was Adrien, why didn't he recognize her? She retreated to the galley, gripping the edge of the counter for support. She couldn't shake the feeling that the man in 3A wasn't just a stranger. He was Adrien, or someone who carried his shadow. The rest of the flight was a blur for Emma. She found herself stealing glances at the man in 3A whenever she could. Every detail about him, the way he adjusted his watch, his relaxed posture, even the way he laughed at the woman's jokes, screamed Adrien. Yet, the man seemed oblivious to her presence. Emma's mind raced. She thought about the day Adrien had died, or at least the day she thought he had. The police had found his car at the bottom of a ravine. The wreckage had been devastating, and the authorities had confirmed that no one could have survived the crash. There hadn't been a body, but the lack of doubt from the investigation had been enough for her to accept the truth. Until now, as she stood in the galley, she was flooded with memories. Their wedding day, his jokes that always lightened her darkest moods, and the promises they had made to each other. Her grief, which had dulled with time, resurfaced with full force. Emma's colleague, Claire, noticed her pale face and trembling hands. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "I'm fine," Emma lied, forcing a smile. "Just a little dizzy. I think I need some water." Claire nodded, but Emma could see her skepticism. She couldn't risk explaining what was going on. Not yet, anyway. As the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, Emma's anxiety heightened. She hadn't spoken to the man, hadn't confronted him, but she was desperate for answers. She wondered if she was losing her mind. Perhaps grief had finally gotten the better of her, distorting her reality. When the plane landed, Emma's chest tightened as she watched him stand, grab his bag, and place a hand gently on the small of the woman's back. The two walked out together, looking every bit the happy couple. Emma lingered in the terminal after the passengers had left, her hands shaking as she replayed every interaction in her mind. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. She pulled it from her pocket and froze at the sight of the message from an unknown number. "I saw you looking at me on the plane." Emma's heart dropped. Her grip on the phone tightened as she read and reread the words. Was it him? Could it really be Adrien? And if it was, why hadn't he said anything? What was he hiding? With her head spinning and her emotions in turmoil, Emma realized her nightmare, or perhaps her salvation, had only just begun. Emma's hands trembled as she stared at the screen of her phone. The message from the unknown number sent a chill down her spine. "I saw you looking at me on the plane." The words confirmed what she feared. Whoever the man in seat 3A was, he had noticed her. And he wanted her to know. Her pulse raced as questions flooded her mind. Was it Adrien? If so, why didn't he acknowledge her? What was he hiding? The message felt cryptic, almost like a challenge. She replayed the moment their eyes met, searching for signs of recognition she might have missed. After finishing her duties on the plane and bidding farewell to her colleagues, Emma found herself too unsettled to go straight home. She walked aimlessly through the terminal, the buzz of travelers and announcements a blur around her. The man in 3A had left with the woman, his arm resting comfortably around her waist. The sight had left Emma feeling gutted, but the message suggested there was more to the story. Back at her apartment, Emma sat on the couch, clutching her phone. Should she respond to the message? Every instinct told her not to. If this man was Adrien, why was he reaching out so mysteriously instead of speaking to her directly? If he wasn't Adrien, then who was he, and how did he know her well enough to text her? After hours of agonizing, Emma finally typed a reply. "Who are you?" Her finger hovered over the send button. She hesitated, then pressed it, feeling a mix of fear and determination. Minutes felt like hours as she waited for a reply, but none came. By the time she went to bed, she was no closer to answers. Her dreams were restless, filled with visions of Adrien, alive, smiling, and just out of reach. The next day, Emma returned to work with heavy eyes and a distracted mind. She found herself scanning the faces of passengers boarding her next flight, half hoping to see the man from seat 3A again, though the thought terrified her. It wasn't long before she was approached by Ryan, a passenger she had briefly chatted with during the previous flight. He was a clean-cut man in his mid-30s with a warm, approachable demeanor. As they spoke, Emma found herself relaxing, his calm presence a welcome distraction from her inner turmoil. "You looked pretty shaken yesterday," Ryan said during a quiet moment. "Everything okay?" Emma hesitated. She had never been one to share her personal life with strangers, but something about Ryan's genuine concern made her want to open up. "I saw someone on the flight yesterday," she admitted carefully. "Someone I thought I'd lost a long time ago." Ryan frowned, his interest piqued. "Lost how?" Emma sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. "My husband. He died 5 years ago, or at least I thought he did. But the man I saw yesterday looked exactly like him." Ryan's expression softened with empathy. "That must have been incredibly difficult. Did you talk to him?" She shook her head. "No, he didn't seem to recognize me." "But then," she hesitated, unsure whether to mention the text message. Ryan noticed her hesitation. "But then what?" "I got a message," she admitted, her voice trembling, "from an unknown number. It said, 'I saw you looking at me on the plane.'" Ryan's brows furrowed. "That's unsettling. Did you reply?" Emma nodded. "I asked who they were, but I haven't heard back." Ryan leaned forward slightly, his voice steady and reassuring. "You need to find out who this man is, Emma. Whether it's your husband or not, you deserve answers. And if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here." Emma felt a surge of gratitude for Ryan's kindness. For the first time since the encounter, she felt less alone. "Thank you," she said, managing a small smile. Their conversation left Emma with a renewed sense of determination. She couldn't ignore what had happened or the questions that now consumed her. She needed to uncover the truth, no matter how painful or shocking it might be. 2 days after the unsettling encounter on the flight, Emma's doorbell rang late in the evening. She had spent much of the day obsessively checking her phone, hoping for a response to her message, but none came. The unexpected ring startled her, and her first thought was that it might be Ryan. He had been supportive, but they hadn't exchanged personal information. When she opened the door, Emma froze. Standing on her doorstep, looking both desperate and hesitant, was Adrien. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. It wasn't just someone who looked like Adrien, it was Adrien. The shape of his face, the slight tilt of his head, even the scar above his eyebrow. He was alive, real, and standing in front of her. "Emma," he said softly, his voice cracking under the weight of emotion. "Please let me explain." Emma's shock turned to anger. She stepped back, her voice trembling with fury. "Explain? You've been dead for 5 years, Adrien. Do you have any idea what you've put me through? I know, Adrien said, stepping inside cautiously. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I didn't have a choice. Emma's eyes burned with unshed tears. Didn't have a choice? You left me to mourn you. You left our daughter without a father. The mention of their daughter, Clara, made Adrien wince. I did it to protect you. Both of you. Emma crossed her arms, trying to steady her voice. Protect us from what? Adrien ran a hand through his hair, his expression weary. I got involved with dangerous people, criminals. At first, it was just business deals that seemed shady but profitable. But I got in too deep. When I tried to pull out, they threatened my life and said they'd come after you and Clara if I didn't cooperate. Emma shook her head, disbelief and anger warring in her chest. So, your solution was to fake your death? To abandon us? It was the only way to keep you safe, Adrien said, his voice thick with regret. I made it look like an accident. I thought if they believed I was dead, they'd leave you alone. And they did. I've spent the last 5 years running, trying to untangle myself from their reach. Emma stared at him, her mind reeling. His explanation filled in the blanks of his absence, but it didn't erase the years of grief and the pain of raising Clara alone. You should have trusted me, she said, her voice breaking. We could have faced it together. Adrien's eyes glistened with tears. I couldn't take that risk. Losing you and Clara was the only thing worse than losing my own life. Emma stepped back, overwhelmed. She needed space to think, to process. You shouldn't have come back. I had to, Adrien said, his voice firm. They found me again, Emma. And now, they might come after you. The hours after Adrien's revelation were a whirlwind of emotions. Emma sat on her couch, staring at the man she had once loved more than anything. He was alive, but his return had shattered the fragile stability she had built over the past 5 years. Adrien tried to explain further. He spoke of the criminal organization he had worked with and the danger they posed, but Emma barely heard him. Her mind kept drifting to Clara, asleep in her room, blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding. Finally, Adrien said, I can leave if that's what you want, but I need to know Clara is safe. Emma's voice was sharp. You don't get to waltz back into our lives and act like you care. You abandoned us, Adrien. Do you have any idea what that did to her? To me? Adrien's shoulders slumped. I know I failed you, Emma, but I want to make it right, if you'll let me. Before Emma could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and saw Ryan's name on the screen. Without thinking, she answered. Ryan? Hey, Emma. Ryan's warm voice came through. I was just checking in to see how you're doing. You seemed pretty shaken up when we talked. Emma hesitated, unsure of how to respond with Adrien sitting right in front of her. I'm okay, she said finally. Listen, Ryan said, his tone softening. I've been thinking about what you told me, and I think I might be able to help. I have some connections that could help you find out who this man really is and what's going on. Emma glanced at Adrien, who was watching her closely. Her heart ached with confusion and betrayal. She had trusted Ryan with her story, and now he was offering to help, while Adrien was asking for her trust again. That's kind of you, Ryan, she said carefully. Can we talk tomorrow? Of course, Ryan said. I'll call you then. When Emma hung up, Adrien's expression darkened. Who's Ryan? Someone who's been helping me cope with all of this, Emma said, her voice firm. Someone who hasn't disappeared for 5 years. Adrien flinched at her words, but didn't respond. That night, Emma barely slept. She felt torn between the man she had loved and mourned and the new life she had started to build. Trusting Adrien again seemed impossible, but ignoring him could put her and Clara in danger. When dawn broke, Emma resolved to take control of the situation. She would hear Adrien out, but keep her guard up, and she would meet with Ryan, who might provide the clarity she desperately needed. For now, she would protect herself and her daughter, no matter how tangled the web of lies and emotions became. Emma spent the following day in a haze, torn between Adrien's pleas for trust and the growing bond she felt with Ryan. She agreed to meet Ryan at a quiet cafe in the city to discuss his offer to help. As she sat across from him, nursing a cup of coffee, she shared the latest revelation. Adrien wasn't just alive. He had returned, claiming he'd faked his death to protect her and Clara. Ryan's expression darkened as he listened. Emma, you need to be careful. If what he's saying is true, it means you're now on the radar of dangerous people. But there's something else you should know. She looked at him curiously, sensing a shift in his tone. What is it? I've been working with law enforcement, Ryan admitted. My company was one of the businesses Adrien's associates targeted. When you told me about him, I started looking into his past. Emma, there's evidence linking Adrien to several criminal activities. He might not be just a victim in all this. Emma's heart sank. You're saying he was involved willingly? Ryan nodded. At least initially. He may have tried to get out later, but by then, the damage was done. I didn't want to tell you this, but I think you deserve to know the truth. The authorities are closing in on his network, and Adrien is a key target. They'll be arresting him soon. Emma's hands shook as she processed Ryan's words. If Adrien was arrested, it would expose Clara to even more chaos. Does he know? She asked softly. Ryan hesitated before responding. I don't think so. But you should prepare yourself, Emma. This is going to get messy. Later that evening, Emma returned home to find Adrien pacing the living room, his face lined with worry. She debated whether to tell him about her conversation with Ryan, but before she could speak, there was a knock at the door. Two men in suits stood on the doorstep, their badges flashing in the dim light. Adrien Clark, one of them asked. Adrien's face paled. He looked at Emma, his eyes filled with regret, and then back at the agents. I'm Adrien Clark, he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his expression. You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and other charges, the agent said, stepping forward to cuff him. Emma watched in stunned silence as Adrien was led away. The man who had once been her entire world was now a criminal in the eyes of the law. The news of Adrien's arrest spread quickly, splashed across headlines and news broadcasts. His face, once a loving husband and father in Emma's mind, was now associated with scandal and betrayal. The media descended on Emma's quiet life, their questions invasive and relentless. She worked tirelessly to shield Clara from the storm. At 8 years old, Clara was too young to understand the full weight of what was happening, but she sensed her mother's stress and the sudden whispers from neighbors. Mommy, why is everyone talking about Daddy? Clara asked one evening as Emma tucked her into bed. Emma's heart ached as she searched for the right words. Because Daddy made some mistakes, sweetheart. But no matter what, he loves you very much. Clara frowned but didn't push further, her innocent trust a bittersweet reminder of what Emma had lost. Ryan remained a steady presence throughout the chaos. He helped Emma navigate the legal mess, offering advice and lending a sympathetic ear. You're stronger than you realize, he told her one evening. You've held everything together for Clara, even when the world was falling apart. Emma appreciated his support, but a part of her couldn't shake the lingering feelings for Adrien. Despite everything, she remembered the man he had been, the man who had once made her feel safe and loved. As the days turned into weeks, Emma began to confront her own emotions. She visited Adrien in prison, determined to get answers and find closure. The cold, sterile environment of the visitation room felt like a metaphor for how distant their lives had become. Adrien looked tired but hopeful when he saw her. Emma, he said, his voice filled with longing. I need to know the truth, Adrien, she said, her tone firm. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Why didn't you trust me to help you? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't want you or Clara to get dragged into this mess. But I see now that I made the wrong choice. Emma studied him, searching for sincerity. Were you involved willingly? Did you know what you were getting into when you joined them? Adrien hesitated, then nodded. At first, yes. I thought it was just business. By the time I realized how dangerous they were, it was too late. I tried to pull out, but they wouldn't let me. That's when I staged my death. Emma's voice broke. Do you have any idea what you put me through? What you put Clara through? Adrien's eyes glistened with tears. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I never stopped loving you or our daughter. Despite her anger, Emma felt a pang of sadness. This was the man she had loved, flawed and broken, but still human. She stood abruptly, her decision made. I can't do this anymore, Adrien. I need to move on, for Clara and for myself. As she walked away, she felt a weight lift from her chest. The past would no longer define her future. Emma spent the days after her visit to Adrien grappling with the emotions it stirred up. Closure didn't come as cleanly as she had hoped. Though her conversation with Adrien had answered some questions, it left her with others, ones that would never have simple answers. The media frenzy was dying down, but the damage lingered. Clara's schoolmates whispered about her father, neighbors cast pitying looks, and Emma's once peaceful life felt irreparably fractured. Through it all, Ryan remained a comforting presence, offering her both practical support and a shoulder to lean on. But something gnawed at Emma. She realized that to truly move forward, she needed to confront the deeper truths about Adrien, about herself, and about the life they had shared. She arranged another visit to the prison, determined to get the answers she needed to let go. Adrien looked visibly more worn when she arrived this time. The stark prison walls seemed to have drained him of the vitality he once had. He smiled faintly when he saw her, but his expression was filled with regret. "Emma," he said, his voice soft, "I wasn't sure you'd come back." She sat across from him, her posture firm. "I came because I need to understand, Adrien. I need to know if you were ever planning to come back to us, or if you thought we'd be better off without you forever." Adrien sighed heavily, running his hands over his face. "Emma, I don't know what I was thinking. At first, I believed I was doing the right thing by staying away. But as the years went by, I convinced myself that you and Clara had probably moved on and that coming back would only hurt you more." Emma frowned, her voice tinged with frustration. "You let me grieve for a man who wasn't dead. You let our daughter grow up without her father. How could you justify that?" "I couldn't," Adrien admitted, his voice cracking. "I knew it was wrong, but I was too much of a coward to face what I'd done. Every day, I thought about you and Clara. I wanted to come back, but I didn't know how." Emma studied him, searching for some trace of the man she had loved. There was no denying his guilt and shame, but she couldn't ignore the pain he had caused her and Clara. "I've loved you, Adrien," she said quietly, "but I've also hated you. And now, I'm just tired. I can't keep carrying the weight of what you did. I need to let it go, for Clara and for myself." Adrien's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, Emma, but I hope one day you'll find peace." She stood, her decision final. "Goodbye, Adrien. I hope you find peace too." Walking out of the prison, Emma felt an odd mix of sadness and relief. She couldn't change the past, but she could choose how to move forward. In the weeks following her final goodbye to Adrien, Emma focused on rebuilding her life. The chaos surrounding his arrest gradually subsided, and she began to find small moments of clarity and peace. Ryan continued to be a steady presence. He never pushed her for anything more than she was ready to give, but his kindness and understanding created a safe space for Emma to heal. He helped her navigate the practical challenges of the fallout, dealing with reporters, managing finances, and ensuring Clara felt secure and loved. One afternoon, while they sat together in the park watching Clara play, Ryan spoke cautiously. "Emma, I want you to know that I'll support you no matter what. Whether that means staying friends or something more, I'm here for you." Emma looked at him, gratitude filling her chest. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope for the future, one not tied to the pain of her past. "Thank you, Ryan," she said softly. "You've been there for me in ways I never expected. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm open to finding out." Over time, their bond deepened into something more. Their relationship wasn't built on drama or chaos, but on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. Ryan became someone Clara adored as well, and Emma found herself imagining a future that was brighter and more stable than she ever thought possible. On a crisp autumn evening, as they shared dinner at home, Clara looked up at Ryan and Emma with a smile. "Are we a family now?" she asked innocently. Emma exchanged a glance with Ryan, and they both smiled. "We're something special," Emma said, pulling Clara into a hug. As Emma reflected on her journey, she realized that while the past had shaped her, it didn't define her. She had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and loss, but she had also found strength, love, and a new beginning. For the first time in years, Emma felt free free to live, to love, and to embrace the future. And she knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, she and Clara would face them together, with the support of the people who truly cared about them. Emma gazed out of the living room window as the golden hues of the sunset painted the sky in warm, vibrant shades. The journey she had endured, from the pain of losing Adrien, to the lonely years raising Clara on her own, to the whirlwind of his shocking return, felt like a storm that had upended everything she once knew. Yet now, she realized that those trials had helped her rediscover herself. Clara, with her bright smile and pure heart, had been Emma's anchor through it all. And then there was Ryan, who hadn't come into her life as a savior, but as a steadfast companion. He stood by her side with patience and sincerity, helping her navigate the chaos and showing her that a new chapter was not only possible but could be filled with love and trust. She turned to watch Ryan and Clara playing on the living room rug, building a miniature house together. Their laughter rang out, a joyful melody that filled the space with warmth. Emma smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She had learned that life was an unpredictable journey, filled with both heartbreak and happiness. What mattered most was the courage to move forward, to let go of the pain that no longer served her, and to embrace the opportunities that lay ahead. The past with Adrien would always be a part of her story, but it no longer defined her. Emma had chosen to focus on the future, holding Clara close and opening her heart to the promise of new beginnings. Life truly is extraordinary, Emma thought as she joined Ryan and Clara on the floor, their laughter welcoming her into the moment. She realized she had not only found a new family but had also found herself, stronger, braver, and full of hope. And for the first time in years, Emma felt truly happy. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story. Emma's journey was filled with challenges, heartbreak, and hope, and I hope it resonated with you as much as it did with me while sharing it. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world and helps us bring more engaging stories to life. Also, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about Emma's journey and her choices. Thank you again for being here, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, take care and stay inspired.